All right. I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining me today on my YouTube channel. I'm Dee, and with me today I have another special guest, my friend Lono, who's joined us today to talk about his teaching experience. Hi, Lono. How are you doing?
Awesome. Awesome. Doing well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And as always on my YouTube channel, our focus is to just help new teachers or even just teachers in general with some tips and tricks and lessons that we've learned. So Lono, tell us what you're doing right now in your journey.
Yeah. Let me start off by saying I began my teaching career pretty early at age 18. I graduated from high school at a private high school for Native Hawaiians, returned to my hometown of Kona, Hawaii, and got engaged, got involved in what's called the Hawaiian language movement.
Mhm.
We began Hawaiian language preschool and then immersion school starting elementary, middle, and then high. And then now we're at doctoral levels teaching Hawaiian. And so that was back in 1996. And I've been teaching ever since.
How
And the
did you get
wonderful
into that?
thing,
Like, what did you just feel drawn to that, or was there someone who influenced
um,
you?
I would say, that I'm a natural teacher, that I love to share, I love to connect, I love to grow. And that's really what teaching is. Um, there is a difference though in how we as Hawaiians, Native Hawaiians teach, and I'm hoping that I can share, maybe enlighten your audience on what that kind of feels like, what it looks like,
Hmm.
what our
Yeah,
expectations
absolutely.
are. Is Kumu, the term for teacher in Hawaiian is Kumu. Kumu also means resource. And so, how does our community look to us as a source of knowledge and a source to give insight as to, the most important values within our culture? So we're much more than just, disseminating facts and talking about opinions. We're actually carriers of knowledge, of truth, and we're trying to pass it down from one generation to the next because we realize if we don't, then we die.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just die with that knowledge. And I like how you brought that up because it is a different philosophy. I mean, we talk about culture, but even when you look at education as a whole in this country, or you could talk about the world, but that's another story. But even just in this country and how students perceive their teacher, how parents perceive teachers and education, it's very, very different. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. How have you seen in your experience that contrast, especially in the beginning of, I guess, the education system versus the culture and that contrast?
So I'll just go back to my experience, my personal experience. I was 18, graduated from high school, didn't have a life. I was pretty much a reject. And so
No,
seriously. And so my mom was like, "What are you gonna do with your life?" And so she was like, "Why
that's a
don't you
valid
volunteer?"
question that all parents ask. Now what are you
Yeah,
gonna do?
yeah. So she was like, "Why don't you volunteer? Why don't you volunteer at this preschool?" It was only 1 or 2 years old by that time.
Okay.
And so my mom was like, okay, while she was a teacher as well. So while she drove to her school, it was on the same route. So she dropped me off. It was pretty interesting. It was in this back road. It was a 2-story green house. She dropped me off, and I had to chant in. So you chant in,
Chanting
you call
in.
out,
Yes, yes.
and then you're welcomed in by the kumu, by the teachers. And it was so amazing because it was I think she must have been in her late 60s, early 70s, big Hawaiian woman. She goes, "Hui, hello, no, como mai, come inside, come inside." She gives
Do
me
you
a
remember
big
the chant?
hug.
Do you remember it?
Huh?
Do you remember the
I,
chant?
I probably just did the a basic chant. Kunihika mauna i kala'i e o ai ale ale la i wailu. Yeah, just a basic chant that we learn.
Mhm.
She welcomed me in with a big hug, a kiss. And it was kind of funny because I think I put my hand out at first. And she's like, ah,
Yeah.
you know, we as Hawaiian people, we as Native people hug and kiss.
Mhm.
You know,
And it's
so
so
right then and
welcoming.
there, right? Oh yeah, so right then and there was like a shocker. And then the rule, the rule of that school was Olelo Hawaii Wale no, which is only speak in Hawaiian. Now, I did not have any formal training in Hawaiian. I was not raised speaking Hawaiian at home. So the only Hawaiian I knew was through music, through hula, through phrases that we used at home, like, you know, sit down, be quiet, throw the trash away, you know, the basic commands that you get as children. So
Yeah.
it was perfect. It was perfect that I could volunteer at a preschool, you know? I
Yeah.
could be the
I
support, like, hey, stand up, kids, sit down, be quiet, listen to the teacher, just basic commands.
yeah.
Um, but what was different was this school, it was known as Punana Leo. Punana is nest, Leo is voice. So it's a nest of voices. We're giving voice to the next generation, to the little birds, right? So that they can chirp and sing in their native language. So the teachers were primarily made up of grandmothers. There were three, four, maybe four grandmas,
Oh,
another younger teacher, and myself. And it was very different. The environment was different. Um, the feeling of family was different. The parents were encouraged to come into the classroom to help where they could, whether it was serving food, playing with the kids, so that they could speak Hawaiian, so that they could learn Hawaiian and then take that knowledge, that experience, and apply it into the home. So it was really, I mean, those grandmothers were not teachers by trade. And so they just taught how they knew best,
which
which
is
was
interesting
raising
because,
Hawaiian family.
when you think about education as an institution, I mean, the earliest learning took place in the home, and it took place from, we learn from those around us. So, just listening to you is reminding me of how much the system is not really conducive to the best way of transferring knowledge from not just the teacher, but the adult. The thing, I'm not saying that we don't need standards and things like that, because I think that can be helpful. But overall, the learning that should be passed on to children isn't, I think, what it should be. And I think there's beauty in, the cultural learning that you're sharing. And I'm remembering my experience of teaching at the charter school and having to chant in, and how you feel welcomed, um as you ask for permission to enter, to learn, and
And,
experience
and
the
and
learning.
granted, I mean, these 3 and 4 year olds don't know. Like, okay, by chanting, I'm preparing myself to enter and to learn. No, that's just something that we pass down without
Yeah.
telling them, without instructing them. Let me just share a little bit more about kind of the more traditional way of learning. We
Hmm.
didn't have a term in Hawaiian for school. There wasn't like an institution per se, where people learned skills and so forth. It was all done within the community. And that community was called a kauhale, which basically means placements of different houses. Each house had a different purpose and function. So, you know, the mini home movement,
Yeah.
Hawaiians had already mastered that. This mini, you had these little homes, these little buildings that had a specific purpose. And so, for instance, you had the halemua where the men met together. and
Yeah.
that's where they did their business. The women had their own house. The women even had their own area when it was that time of the month for them to rest and be restored. There was a place for weaving. There was a place. So there was function in every single area. And children, when they were from the ages from 0 to about 7, 8 years old, they all stayed with the mothers and the grandmothers. It was the mothers and the grandmothers that primarily taught them what their responsibilities were and how to accomplish that. And then when the young boy became, uh, I wouldn't say a young man, but when he was finally able to put on his own malo, when he was able to put on his own clothing, because before that time they just kind of ran naked, right? it was it was a very natural environment, a natural home environment. So when that boy was finally able to stand on his own 2 feet and tie his own malo, then he transitioned from learning with the women and went with the men to the halimua. And he was taught his responsibilities as a young man, what his role was, his responsibilities, how to conduct himself, and then the kahuna, or the kind of, I don't know what kahuna is in English, kind of the teacher, I guess, the specialist. Yeah, that's what it is. Specialist would know where this kid would excel. And a lot of it was through observation. A lot of it was through conversation. I'm sure they had conversations with the women. Hey, that kid is very maka'ala, very alert. I noticed that when so there's conversation happening, there's observation, and then you can see their product, what they can produce. So if you're a fisherman and you see that they're very good at fine, like making their line for a fishing line and hooking up the hook, that kind of intricate interweaving, they might say, we can see he's already mastering a skill at such a young age. Let's take him and move him forward in the different um, areas of deeper learning. So it wasn't like today, like, oh, what do you want to become? Those kind of questions weren't at the forefront in Hawaiian education, 200, 300 years ago. It was, what did the elders, what did the people in the community see within you? What were you able to produce? What were you able to contribute and offer? And that's kind of how it molded together. I know it's totally different than what we see today, but it was very important to know your role as a Hawaiian young man and a Hawaiian young woman.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about assessments, right? Um, and how they take tests and we see what they know, but someone wrote the test. And I feel that what you were saying when you were talking about observation, that's not in there. You know what I mean? Assessing a child and their abilities a lot of times isn't all inclusive in this written assessment that they take, but there's a lot to be observed. And it's really interesting that observation is not included in the assessment. And that's not, it doesn't continue with the child, right? Necessarily. Like as a high school teacher, I wouldn't necessarily see um, how that child was assessed, in previous years. And I feel like that's an important piece to, as a teacher, to know. I mean, it's going to take me time to get to know that child before I get to know what they're like and how they learn. But it's too bad that all of that is so far removed. So, in your experience, what are some things that you see were valuable as you've, learned more about the Hawaiian cultural history of, well, just learning and living versus what we see today in education?
I don't know if this is the right
Oh, it's your
answer,
opinion. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just thinking about when you look at rigor, relationships, all of that kind of, those, I don't know if you know about the three R's in education, but one thing that's really important is relationships, yeah, when it comes to education. I had
Yeah,
shared with you, like like what we teach students is just basically rote skills. I don't know if we do a good job at preparing them for the future, for the ups and downs, for future. So like in order to get a job, we teach them that you have to, be experienced. You have to be able to contribute. And the way you go
yes.
about showing that is through a resume and then letter of intent, and then you apply. But the truth of the matter is that's not how you land jobs, right? It's through your network. It's through
And
your
that's not
network.
taught.
Well, in Hawaiian culture-based education, it is taught. You are taught what, who are you, where do you come from, who's your family, who do you know. So in Hawaii, we don't. When you first meet a person, you don't ask them, "Oh, so what's your occupation?" Yeah,
I'm laughing because that's all I get asked out here on the East
yeah,
Coast.
it's very Western, very, yeah.
Right, I
But
know.
in
Because you think to
Hawaii,
a
we ask the question, "What school did you go to? What school you went? Yeah, what school you
where
went?
you live, who's your family?
Yeah, where you from?" Oh, and then it's kind of like, "Do you know so and so?" "Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah." And then it
I
kind
went to
of
school with
goes that
them.
direction. Yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
it's,
my auntie.
yeah, 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 that's my auntie. Oh, yeah. And it gets very lively, right? So it's the connection that you make. But just going back to the idea of, teaching students to become something for society, we need to pay more attention to this idea of networking. When you go into business, if you're an entrepreneur, that's key, right?
Yeah,
But it is key even if you want to become a teacher. So we've heard the phrase, I think I shared this with you earlier. We've heard the phrase, it's not who you know. I mean, you hear that, right? It's who you know. That's how you're gonna get the job. It's who you know. But
I
actually, if you flip it, it's who knows you. And I share that with you
like that.
because who knows you, it's very Hawaiian because you are the kumu, you are the source, you are the teacher. So people will come to seek after you, na na ike kumu, to look towards the kumu rather than the kumu looking out. Rather, you looking out, searching for something. You build your character, your internal skills, your communication skills, and people will be seeking after you. That's kind of the mindset of of culture-based education, and that's just relationships, right? We
Hmm.
didn't even go to what kind of relationships, what different types of relationships. You have familial relationships, so nepotism, yeah, that's thrown outside. Yeah, that's thrown in the trash can.
Yeah.
Nepotism, not nepotism is not the correct term. The correct term is mo'oku auhau, which is your genealogy, your lineage. So it's not just genealogy like blood related. You can actually be part of a family through what's called hanai, through
Oh
adoption.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, through
There's a lot of
adoption. And so you land work, you grow into work as you maintain your relationships within your own family.
that.
Yeah, people never look at your family, but when you look at wealthy um, families in America, it's generational wealth, right?
Yeah.
That's not something we teach in the school system. I think we should, even if you come from a economically low income family, you still have worth. You have so much to give.
Well,
So
that's
yeah, that's
I
just
like
that's
that
just genealogy. You know what I'm saying?
because it's true. You would think that it would be natural to, as you grow and progress, that you would naturally pull people up with you. But, that's not taught and that's not, in society as a whole. It's just everybody for themselves. And I think that, like what you were saying, I know in my mind, I always remember and keep in touch with people, well, like and other friends that, and I would tell my husband that it's important to me to not only fill my life with people who uplift or that I can learn from, but even keeping in touch and maintaining relationships, all of that is really important. And as I teach, that's definitely something that I try to share with my students, and no, that's not in the standard to talk about these things, but I feel like a lot of times the kids are not getting real world um solutions to surviving out there. Because it's not just getting a job. Obviously people need jobs to pay their bills, but really knowing yourself and thinking about, but is that something that will make you happy? Because there's so many people who are not happy, and it's because it's not fulfilling, in the sense that you feel that fulfillment when you're able to contribute as a whole. But again, that's not really something that's taught. So I love that you brought that up. Um, and just the things that you're doing in
I
your
think
work.
that's the problem in America and worldwide. I mean, after the pandemic, we've seen an exodus of teachers
Yes.
from this career, and they're like, you know what? I don't need to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, and the pay is not that great anyways. Let me do something else. And they find it to be more attractive. And so, yeah, we really need to relook at our educational system,
Yeah,
of
this is
how
the
we
time.
treat teachers.
There are wonderful people. So I'm on a lot of different Facebook groups with teachers, new teachers. It's my content area social studies, so I'm in some social studies groups, and there's a lot of people that are
Great people.
frustrated. They're suffering, mentally, emotionally, because they don't have the support, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of people looking to alternatives, such as online
Oh
programs. Like
man,
I'm in one. Well, I'm actually in
let's
two.
create a school. Let's do something.
I know we've talked about doing
Through an
a
indigenous
tournament.
land, but I mean, kind of make it. Well, anyways, we can talk about that later. But
Yeah,
we should get
I
together, man.
I
I
feel
think
like
we could
now
do
is the
wonders.
time that people are
Now's the
looking to
time.
alternatives. You know what
Let me just interject here because I wanted to talk about rigor.
I mean?
So back in old Hawaii, right?
Okay.
Rigor was life or death.
Oh yeah.
That was the standard.
Yeah.
Okay. That was
Survival.
the standard, life or death. It wasn't, oh, can I play some video games? No, you're mastering the skill because you have to catch the fish in order to feed your family. If you don't feed your family, then you die.
Yeah, right.
Yeah?
And there's no time to be idle, you know?
Oh, no,
I feel like
no.
nowadays there's so much of that. Which is interesting because we have technology that can really help give all kids access to learn globally. You're not just limited to your location, and yet that's not capitalized on. Um,
No, it's not.
yeah, we gotta definitely have another conversation about about that. But
Offline, offline.
yeah,
Or
and
maybe we can attract some of our teacher friends onto our
it's
idea.
true.
I
Yeah,
actually
because
think you can be way more effective. I mean, the pandemic was beautiful for me. I taught a few classes, even though I wasn't a teacher, we needed help. I was an administrator, but I learned that you can actually connect more with students online.
yeah, it's
There's not as many distractions like in the classroom, you're not like pulling your friend's hair or like throwing things or
wonderful.
looking at your phone. You have to be engaged online and the teacher can observe, they know what's happening.
Hmm.
And I just loved teaching online, and I was able to incorporate cultural values in such a unique way. So I'll just give one example, okay?
Okay.
So I was teaching a class, it was once a week. It was 3 hours long. That's not encouraged for seventh graders. A 3 hour long class is not good, right? It's not good for anyone. Way too long. So um, we were looking at sustainability from a traditional perspective foundation. And so one day I was talking about the idea of ma'alama. Ma'alama means to take care of, and it's often used in taking care of one another. But ma'alama also means taking care of time. It also means taking care of your environment. And so I did this little activity with the students. It was amazing. I was like, okay, bring out your cameras. I want you to focus on an area in your house, your apartment, wherever you're at, that needs attention, that needs your physical touch, that needs your malama. So they take a picture, let's say it's a messy desk. They take a picture, say, okay, guys, I'm giving you 5 minutes. Here you go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, go. 5 minutes and playing some music. And you just see these kids jump up from their chairs and they're going for it. They return, they take a picture, and it's like before and after, right? Then and there, they get to see when they're intentional in a good work, what they can produce just in 5 minutes. We did every class after that
Oh,
with the idea of taking care of each other. And then we applied it to relationships with their grandparents, with their uncles and aunts. They did personal interviews. That's a form of taking care of people. So, I mean, yeah,
there's so much.
indigenous education is where it's at. I already gave you an example of the Kauhale, the mini home system. I didn't even talk about the other systems that we have in Hawaii that could transform education. Yeah.
It really can. And not only that, but strengthen families. As you were talking about relationships, there's so much that's broken that can be easily mended through, like you were saying, giving that love
I
and
had two parents that responded that like came into the Zoom camera area and like, Kumo, this is the best class we ever had. Keep it up. They're like, Kumu, we love this class. Just the fact that their child got up to clean,
yeah,
so they were so happy, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
then we just had so much fun. We looked at food and the relationship between man and food of substance. Like, what is a hot dog? What is a hot dog made out of? So they learned the process of growing, processing, making food. And then we did fun activities like we had I think it was a fried rice competition.
that's funny.
Yeah,
You
and
you had
and so
fun
it
with
was
steak
it
fried rice.
was with the idea with, okay, everyone has rice at home in Hawaii, right? That's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
But the idea was to make fried rice with whatever you had in your cabinet, whatever you had in your refrigerator, because that's basically it, fried rice, right? You
yeah.
just cut up any vegetable, meat,
Mm.
egg, mix it up, put the rice, boom, you got fried rice.
Soy sauce.
Now, it sounds easier said than done, but I had to go through the entire process. I had to get parents' permission. I had to make sure that there was someone to supervise, an adult there who was, I said, 16 years old. I mean, there's just a lot of work, but once you create that system, you can really excel. It was
Yeah.
so much fun that we had to do it again. We did a dessert competition. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Well, yeah. Who doesn't like any lesson around food? That
Well, you
definitely.
should have seen how interactive the kids were. It's like them playing video games online. Like, oh my gosh, is she putting ketchup in her friend? It was just very like intense.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
then they had to present. We had a panel of judges. Then they had to present. They had their supervisor taste their food and comment on it. And we could tell if the sibling or the parent was like legit, like authentic in their response, or if they're just making it up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, talk about like not being afraid to present, to interact. That's really like throwing them. Like in Hawaii, we don't take you to swimming lessons.
Oh yeah.
We grab you and we throw you in the deep water. And that is how you learn how to swim.
Out of
Your body
necessity.
will, your body will figure it out.
Oh
But
yeah.
if you have support systems, if you have a board and if you have things on your arm, it's like we're babying you. Once again, rigor.
Yeah.
Throw them in. We're not going to drown them. We're not throwing them with the sharks.
Yeah.
We will monitor them. And that is the purpose of a fumu.
Yeah.
Yeah, of a kumu, of a teacher is to be with them through the thick and through the thin, through life and death. That's another thing. I'm so sorry. Just keep rambling. Like you don't even
No,
have to ask
you're
me
on a
questions.
roll.
It's like I'm flowing. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
one of the big differences in Western education and that of Hawaiian education is the idea of kumu and haumana, teacher and student relationship.
Do you
So,
remember like a kumu that, really had an impact in your life? Like when you think back to your
oh
learning
gosh, yes, I
experience?
sure do. But let me ask you this question. Hey Dee, do you remember your professors in your undergraduate from
Yeah.
your undergraduate degree? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you keep in contact with any of them?
No.
That's my point. My point is
Well,
it's
when I was
for
there, I did, but then
no
now
no
I'm
no no no
here and
no
I
no no
don't.
no no no. That's not my point. D, that's not my point. My point is it's short-lived. It's for a time being. Okay, 2023 fall semester, you have Miss D. Done. Next semester, you have so and so. That relationship ends.
Yeah.
In Hawaiian culture-based education, that relationship lasts forever. It lasts forever. Sometimes you go into the store and you see your teacher, you're like, oh my gosh, you turn around, you turn the other direction. I don't want to see that teacher.
Yeah.
That's not what we try and create. A true teacher student relationship is kind of like a parent child relationship. It lasts forever.
Well, yeah, because
So,
there's that emotional connection. You're really invested. I mean, I think back to those professors. I mean, if they took a personal interest in my life, um, it's much easier to connect with someone who wants to connect with you. You know what I mean? Which is why I was saying when I was there and you run into people, it's easy to like keep in contact. But when there isn't that relationship,
I
there's
don't
no
stay connected.
interest
I
in
don't
me.
stay connected to any of those professors unless I run into them in the community. But I'm a kumu hula, which is a teacher or resource of Hawaiian hula and everything that deals with Hawaiian culture. I remember every single one of my kumu hula, my hula teachers. I remember conversations we've had. I remembered experiences that we have, and we stay connected. These relationships are so tight that it's like, okay, let's say your kumu was sick, would you go sacrifice your own life to take care of your kumu?
Mhm.
And the response would be yes. I remember one of my kumu who was deathly sick, he couldn't walk, but outside of the classroom time, I would visit him at least once or twice a week
Mhm.
and sit right next to him, talk story like we say in Hawaii. But that relationship, I don't know how to say it. It's just like
It's bonding. It's
it's forever.
Yeah.
You
Well,
never
because they
forget them.
become family.
Well, and also his wife and their children and grandchildren, they become a part of your
Oh, that's true.
network, a
Yeah,
part of your family. So
absolutely.
yeah, I'm hoping that people listening will realize that relationships matter. Um, I'll share one more experience. I was teaching third and fourth grade Hawaiian language immersion. We had a brand new student, didn't speak a lick of Hawaiian, and I told the father, we don't translate. I don't speak in English. We just teach all in Hawaiian, every single subject matter. And so he agreed upon it. Anyways, fast forward 6 months later, I meet with the father again, and he's like, I thank you so much for taking in my son. My time in this life is short. I've made bad decisions in my life. Basically, he did drugs, and it was impacting him. But he said, I only have a short time here in life. That kind of boggled my mind. Any case, he dies. He dies like a month later.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we're shocked, right? Well, this child did not have a mom. The dad dies. So I don't even know how many more days we had with him until he was moved with his aunt or a family member. But I distinctly remember bringing all the other students together, and we talked about this student, and we prayed for that student. We sent good vibrations, good memories to that students, and then we wrote letters, and then we put it in this envelope. Well, I got so caught up in the everyday teacher kind of. I mean, I was teaching 7 out of 8 periods back
Oh,
in the
yeah.
day, in the
Mhm.
public school. It just was hard. Anyways, I never sent that envelope
Mm.
to his family. And that is probably one of the biggest regrets I have as a teacher, is because I didn't send, I was the messenger, right? I didn't send the message from all of his classmates because they didn't have contact with him. They're only in third, fourth grade.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
so that's a hard one for me, but it all stems back to the relationship that you have
Mhm.
with not just the student, but the family and the community, right?
Yeah. I like that it's true. Relationships are so important. I mean, like when I give advice to a new teacher, right, because even whenever I start at a new school, principals are always saying, make sure that you do the getting to know you activities, which is that you're building that relationship of trust um, with your students, because a lot of times you can get caught up in, well, I got to jump right into the content and forget about the relationships with your students. So if you had to give advice to yourself, like what you know now, all the knowledge that you know now, so if you had to give advice to yourself as a new teacher, what would that advice be?
I don't know. I don't know because every time I go into the classroom, I feel like a new teacher.
Yeah, yeah, I
I, I
agree.
never I never teach the content the same.
Yeah,
It
same.
might be the same principle, but the way you get the students engaged is always different. So I never feel like I'm a inexperienced teacher.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking to brand new teachers, I would say be creative.
Mm, I like.
And when I say be creative in how you go about, I mean, you have some, core and effective like strategies in teaching and so forth, but there's nothing like um, being creative as a teacher and feeling fulfilled. And yeah, that's what I would say is just be creative, be flexible, move forward, and then be reflective. Like what worked, what didn't work, what did you enjoy, how did the students progress? Always with the focus with how did the students progress. If it's just like, oh man, I feel so good, we watched a movie and the kids have popcorn and they were so happy. No, 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 no. I'm not talking about like filling up your own
Right.
gas tank. Like, oh, I'm a good teacher. Yeah, I can drive my own automobile. No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. But having them apply what they learn is beautiful. creating environments so that they thrive is important. So yeah, that's what I would recommend to a new teacher is be very creative and the journey. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you.
Well, I don't even know if this is what I wanted to say or what I was supposed to say, but I know I could just keep on talking about teaching and learning.
Because it's what we do. I mean, we're lifelong learners. So, even in our own lives, we're constantly learning. And so it is joyful to be able to share what we've learned. There's so
I
much.
know, but I don't know if I even shared like 1% of what
I'm
I
sure
value.
not. It's like a snapshot.
I
It's a
guess.
snapshot of what came to your mind at this
For
time.
me, I felt like I pressed the button on my phone and it took like 20 pictures. I was like, shh. I don't know what it's called, but it's kind of like that one button where you can take like 20
Burst,
shots.
I think it's
Yeah, something like that. Anyways,
um
yeah, no, this is fine. I mean, was there anything you wanted me to focus on? And let me see if I can think this through.
I think it was just, I mean, because I find that I have all of these wonderful people in my life that I've learned so much from, and I've learned from you. And so I thought, whatever you felt in your heart to share, with
Well, you
people
know what?
who.
Let me share something, an experience that both of us had, and maybe you can share your experience as well
Okay.
of that. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember, Dee, but we worked together one summer. I was back in Kona. It was a 3-year federal grant,
Yes, the grant.
and we were doing a summer program, right, to help the students connect with that land, with the people, with the community of that area.
Yeah,
And
that was
so I
awesome.
brought you on board. I brought someone else on board. And I remember one thing that was really important to me was generational learning.
Yeah.
And so we had high school students and some that
Great.
have graduated. And I don't know if you
They're
recall this,
great
but
too. The
we
family.
actually had an interview with them.
Mm,
And I gave them scenarios, like, okay, what would you do in this situation if and so it was kind of like a real life interview that they would have if they were to get a job.
right.
They went through that process, they had to fill out the application. And then before we brought in the youngsters, I think they were third through fifth graders, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
You came and you were in charge of developing well, not really developing because it was already developed, but like bringing out the leadership skills out
Mm.
of them. I
Oh,
don't know if you remember that, but it was a week long. We had them for a week, and then we brought in the youngsters, and
mhm.
that's when the tire like hit the road, right? The rubber hit the road
Yeah.
because I think we came across some difficult situations. We didn't have a specific location. We went
Oh,
to
right.
the beach
Yeah.
and there was a tidal wave. I don't know if you remember that. There was a tidal wave that happened
Because
and
there
it
was like
kind of,
a holler there
yeah,
on the yeah.
it wiped out the entire, not wiped out, but it covered the entire space. And so we had to, okay, we couldn't go to the beach. And so we had to, anyways, I just remember the life lessons that I learned as an educator and as an administrator from you, because one thing you did was at the end of every day, you rallied this group of five, I think they're like five teenagers, and we debriefed. And then they gave their input.
Mm,
And then we worked off of their input, we talked about it, and then we planned for the next day. And
yeah.
I remember getting some negative feedback about my leadership, you know. I,
Mm,
I remember hearing that. It wasn't from a student, but it was from one of our colleagues. And I just was like, oh dang, that really humbled me. But it was fast learning. Um, uh, the fact that we were in and out from different locations, and
yeah,
that it
there's
was
a lot going on.
hands-on, it was tough. But let me ask you this question from what you recall, because it was a while back. From what you recall, what did you notice? What did you notice in regards to like the students, the high school students progressing in their character, in their leadership? How do you think they grew within that 6 week period?
Yeah, I think that they did a really great job. I mean, because it's not easy working with kids, and then especially when you're a teenager and you're still learning about yourself, but then you also have to, or you're in a leadership role with this younger group, having to take care of them. And it was interesting to see how, as everyone does, I would say, what you were raised or how you were raised, the values that you were taught, all of that comes out. So how you talk to people, how you care for them or not, it really comes out. And so it was interesting to see like the difference between like the boys and the girls, or even just the ages. Or even within their group, there are those who like really stood out, and you could see the other ones that were trying to learn from the others. But overall, I could see that they were learning from each other. They were learning about themselves. They were learning from you and from us, and even the little ones, because it's fun to see the little ones looking up to them too. Like they're superstars or celebrities, and just
Totally, they
being
saw that,
excited
right?
because there was always that excitement, I thought, to be there, to learn, to do these activities, and also gratitude. I always felt that the kids were really good. Both our mentors and the little ones, they were all really good at expressing gratitude for the day and the activities and things like that. So overall, it was a really good experience for me. Um, and it was all brand new, yeah. So it was still fun to do our best to provide the learning and the learning experiences, but then also learn from each other. I thought it was a really good program. What
I have a
happened?
bunch of memories. I have a bunch of memories that come back to me. One of which was, I think we were surprised because you were staying at my parents' house when we were teaching, that you were downstairs, and we would reflect and talk about it. But I think we were
Yeah,
surprised
always
to see,
debriefing. Okay, how was
always
like this
debriefing, right? And
summer?
improving.
What are we gonna do tomorrow?
Yeah,
How,
we got a tidal wave. What are we gonna do, right?
yeah, who's gonna go
I
get this
remember
support?
though, like we were surprised at the younger mentors, like the ninth, 10th graders.
Yeah, yeah.
They stepped up to the plate. I remember how much they were so much more gentler and kinder to the younger kids. I remember that. And then I
Yeah,
remember the older kids are just like, oh man, I am done with these little kids. It is
right.
hot out here. I just want to be on my phone,
Or
kind
doing
of
something
thing.
else with their summer, yeah.
Right, right. And then the other memory that comes to my mind was, I think we did assessments as well. I think it was part of the grant, which is kind of good about grants in a way because they
Yeah,
require you to have really meaningful assessments. There are two assessments that we had. One was the Ho'ike,
yeah.
where the students
Oh,
actually
cute.
had to present right in front of their parents. We
Mhm.
love that in Hawaii, when the parents come and the family
Yeah,
come and they bring
it's like
play
a
and
celebration of learning, really.
celebration, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember just debriefing with the little kids, asking them, "Oh, so what was your funnest activity this week?" And you know what they always would say was learning how to make a fishing pole and go fishing. Can you
Yeah,
believe that?
it's so funny. It's so
Out of
cute
their own bamboo that we harvested from my backyard,
though. Yeah.
they learned how to tie, and then actually go fishing. Even if they didn't catch fish, that was like their highlight. Like, how simple is that?
Well, and it's
Like,
so fun because, the traditional public school learning is just in the classroom, reading, writing, maybe watching videos, but it's not out in life applying it, and I think
totally.
that's
Have you
so
ever
valuable.
heard of the proverb, um, give a man a fish, teach him how to eat it, he eats it kind of thing. teach him how to fish, and he,
Well,
what
eat
is it?
the rest of his life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that to me is very limiting because in the Hawaiian perspective, it's like, oh, you fish? Cool. Really, the next question is, what kind of fishing do you do? Like, what kind? There's 100 plus different techniques and strategies of fishing, right?
Hmm.
So that's where indigenous knowledge is so much more important. So if you want to go fishing with a line, yeah, you catch a couple of fish. That's good for you. It's just sports. Throw the fish back in, cool, or you take it home, eat it. You just feed yourself. If you want to feed your family, you have to learn how to spearfish. So you go catch a little bit more fish with the spear. If you want to feed more, like several families, then you learn how to throw net or you lay net. And now you're able to feed, 4 families. But what happens when you want to feed 1,000 people?
Yeah.
Now you're talking about hukilao, where
Yeah.
you actually
More
lay
people.
the net, lots of preparation, lots of people bringing it in. What happens when you want to sustain thousands of people?
Yeah. No.
Then you have what's called a fish pond. Like fish
Mhm.
farming, what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Hawaiians already had fish farming in a natural environment where the fresh water from the mountain and the salt water come together. That area is ideal where seaweed grows. You trap the fish inside and you have a refrigerator for, yeah, you have a refrigerator for the rest of your life, right? So now you're
It's
feeding
awesome to take the kids to
hundreds.
see that, to physically see
Well, well, what I'm trying to get to is when you're talking about just that skill of applied knowledge, we're not just talking about, okay, this is how you make, like, if we were serious about education, we would have them learn about the different types of fishing, the different purposes, the different areas, and how they actually fish. Because Gila water is murky, it's a little dirty, has a lot of brackish water. And then you go to Kona, more salty, more clean, more clear. The fish tastes better. I'm biased. I'm from Kona, but
that. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so now you have to teach them about place, the importance of place, the importance of knowledge, but there's just so much more out there that they can learn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of this technique, but they have what is called the imu,
Yeah.
which is a pile of rocks. Well, you would put that in the ocean and you would actually put like fish, like food, like coconut, and you would put it in the rocks. And
Ah,
then the fish, it would attract the fish to come and eat. So after a while, they're like, oh, free food, just like humans, right? Oh, free
you're
food, here
making
we
me
come.
hungry talking about all this fish.
Well, here's how you catch them. You feed them, right? You feed them, and then you bring your net and you just catch them. They're there. It's so easy. Another thing our people did was they would feed them like sweet potatoes and taro, all of the leftover after it was done cooking all the scraps. They would go and feed the fish. Look at how ingenious our people were. That's why we could sustain 600,000 to 1 million people. That was the estimate
Right.
pre-Western contact. We
Okay,
can
so
barely we can barely do 10% in Hawaii with 1.6 million people.
it's true.
Like,
And not very many know how to fish. But you talking about that reminded me of a student that I had. Um, because when I was working with the at-risk kids and it was their last chance before they got moved to an alternative school off campus. And so one of the requirements was that they had to write a paper, right? For English. And, you know, and they're so rebellious about wanting
yeah,
to do that, right?
uninspired, right? They're
Because
uninspired.
this one student, he was telling me, he's like, what am I gonna write, a paper on? And English is so boring. Well, he just thought school was boring. And we just got talking about his interests and kind of find out he and his family are avid fishermen. And so that's a thing that they do like every day after school and on the weekend because the family sells it. So it's part of their livelihood. And so I said, why don't you write your paper about that, about the fish that you catch, like you were saying, the techniques, and he just got so excited. His face just lit up and he was like, oh, I could write a lot about that. And I remember getting that report from this kid who's just been so against being at school and learning. And I get this report that he put in a folder and, it had his, I mean, and I didn't tell him to do that. He was just so excited to turn it in and to share. And he was like telling me, oh, and I talked to my dad and my uncles about all these different, I mean, he really went above and beyond because it was something he was really excited about, something that he does. It's his livelihood, as you mentioned, like live or die type of skill. And I was blown away at how much he knew. Like he could literally, that could be a business where he could teach people what he knows because at that age, I think he was 16. Um, he's already got a wealth of experience because he grew up fishing. Um, and at that point, right? I mean, he was like an expert and
See,
he
now
even shared
now
some
now
recipes
with now
too.
with technology, he could really make it a career. So I have a friend in Hawaii that's creating an app where people who come to Hawaii, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center and do a tour, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go to Waikiki and take a surfing lesson. That's great and all, but is there an app where, let's say, I want to learn traditional
Mm,
fishing, or I want to learn how to make
yes.
traditional poke? Poke is a huge
Yeah.
thing here in the mainland, right? Poke bowl.
Yes.
Well, now people can go to that app, tap on it and say, you know what? I want to learn. I want to know the seasonings. I want to learn how to cut. I want to make it with a native, with the real deal.
Mm.
And you
That's
can actually, yeah, people can purchase your skill or purchase the experience.
yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? So like with technology, we can not only teach and have our own school online, but you can create businesses for these students where it's like, oh, I never thought anything about my ability to, let's say they're able to
Well, even with the hula.
I'm just thinking like video gaming.
Oh yeah.
Video gaming is a huge thing with kids, right? But you know that some people are learning languages through video gaming, like basic Japanese. So
Oh,
can you
okay.
imagine if there was a course, like let's say that kid knew how to speak Japanese and it was from gaming. Like he could create their own system of learning how to speak Japanese. Yabai, gambare, kimi wa, like all these phrases, and then creating it into a system where people actually learn.
I like
They're
that
not
idea.
learning how to game, but they're learning how to communicate
Yeah.
in that language through having fun, through gaming. Games are so fun. That's another thing. Hawaiians, we are so competitive. People do not realize this. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We're
So
gonna compete to see who can eat the most. Watch out, okay? You're doing your exercises, you're getting your elbows ready to put on the table. Football games, oh, we're cheering, we're yelling. I mean, we're very competitive. And so why don't we take that drive and apply it with games in learning, in teaching and learning and true education? It should be challenging and it should be fun.
yeah, it should be.
And you should be able to take risks and lose.
Yeah. And be okay with that and you just go again.
I'll give one more example of gaming, right? So like in Hawaiian culture, we have what was called makahiki. It was a season where we
Mm,
actually rested
that's
from our labors, and it was during the winter season, which makes sense because that's when it's raining and storming. We don't want to be outside, you know?
mm-hmm.
It's freezing cold. We're
Yeah.
gonna be inside and playing games and weaving and stuff like that. But in any case, we had so many awesome games. But we applied it. We had in 8th grade last year, we had the students take a standardized test.
Okay.
It was the pre-SAT for 8th grade, for goodness sake. Anyways, they took it at the beginning of the year, and then we did another test at the end of the year. Well, we use this wonderful, wonderful system where we didn't have to create it, it's art, you just purchase it.
Yeah.
Well, the students, they were, let's just say they performed at an 800 level SAT in language arts.
Okay.
This one teacher was able to get them 2 to 300 above their original. So if they start at 800, they're at 1,000. If they start at 1,000, they're at like 1,200. Amazing. Well, what did this teacher do? They required them to do 15 minutes each day of perfecting a skill. Let's say it's capitalization or punctuation, and they're learning that, right? And it's just a test that they take online, right? Well, then I come in, I hear about this, I'm like, okay, guys, if 80% of you improve by, I forget what the points were, but if 88% of you on average improve, then I will have a pizza party for you. So that was the incentive. We focused on 2 months, and they blew every other class away because they had a collective goal. They had an incentive. The teacher gave them 15, 20 minutes each day. It wasn't like extremely hard. It wasn't like
Yeah.
1 hours. Oh my gosh, right?
Right.
And they focused, and we had fun, and they performed well. I mean, I think the average was 1,100 for that teacher. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
SAT, English.
Yeah. That is amazing. Look at that. Lono for president. Okay, so um
That's not funny.
so yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to share? I'll or we could
I,
always do like another one.
no, I think you're probably tired of me.
No, I meant like because
I
as
know
far
what
as
you
like
mean.
what people will want to watch.
True, true,
Right.
true.
So we have this one and
Um,
then it's like a hook for the next one.
oh man, whatever. I'm more concerned about the students. I'm very worried about our educational, not necessarily system, but how our students are learning and being taught. They can learn on their own. You
Yeah.
just leave a student by themselves, and they're on their computer or on their phone for the entire day, right?
Yeah.
So they know how to inspire themselves. They know how to motivate themselves. We just have to catch up as adults.
I think too th- the kids today, because they're so bombarded with different options of what to do with their time, whether it's gaming or social media or streaming, or you know what I mean? There's just so many things that
Same with us. Same with us.
they they can motivate and drive themselves, is true, but I think they also like the little bursts. So for example, um even if we have the 50-minute, it's weird because it varies, right? Some classes are 50 minutes, some are like 80 minutes. But if they have the opportunity to learn what they want to learn, they will be glued to, their devices or, whatever they have to learn because they're excited about it. And I feel like somewhere learning became all about um no, you need to learn what I'm going to teach you, as opposed to really inspiring kids to explore what they want to learn. And I think that's why they graduate and so many still haven't figured out what they're interested in and what they want to do with their lives. I feel like school, like you were saying with learning how to fish, if you understand that learning, everything that you learn in school is going to help you after you graduate so that you can teach your children, so you can get a job or pursue a career that you enjoy or start a business, um, and teach other people what you're passionate about. You know
Well, the thing is, let's say
what I mean?
you have a focus, right? A content that you have to focus on. You can still include the students' input
Yeah.
as to what direction you're going to take. So, like for Hawaiian culture, I asked the students, what are you most interested? What are you most interested about in learning? What are you most interested in learning about your Hawaiian culture?
Hmm.
So some would say I'm most interested in la'au lapa'au, which is traditional medicine. Some said hula, some said fishing, some said law in the Hawaiian kingdom. I mean, just a variety of responses, right? But just that question itself will help you as a teacher to kind of create. Like, that's why I say it's so important that you have a creative mind as a teacher.
Hmm.
Or that once a week class that I had online for sustainability, I asked them, like, what are you most interested about? Let's look at sustainability from 1,000 different perspectives. And so some talked about food production. That's part of sustainability. Some of them wanted to study the politics behind food production. Others wanted to look at the relationship between humans and the land. And so we built 10 different elements of the course. We built the course, we co-created the course, and then we voted. We voted. And it was kind of interested because I didn't say, okay, here's number one, what do you vote? We actually talked about each
Hmm.
one, and some kids were trying to persuade the others to be like, come on, you guys, let's really focus on folklore. Like, it's the stories that give meaning. It's not just making food. Like, the folklore is, the story is so ono, it's so tasty. Don't you guys want to learn about your ancestors? And so there was this kind of give and take that was happening. And then at the end of that period, we voted and we had to accept it. We accepted our top, I think it was top three or top four, and that's what we focused on throughout the that semester.
I like
But
that. I
that
like
was,
that collaboration. That's important.
oh yeah. Yeah, you give voice to the students, It doesn't matter what age they are, even
Absolutely.
in college.
Because you remind me of when, again, that same group, that student that I had was the same group of students where, they had been failing ninth and 10th grade 2 times. Um, right? Because if you fail a grade level twice, there's that social promotion. Anyway, so I just said to them, I just said, what is it that you just don't enjoy about school, and what would you like to learn about? Because I mean, clearly, however the curriculum's set up, it's not working,
It's
right?
not working.
So just tell me in your own words, what is difficult about school for you, right? And so, of course, there's things like, it's boring or, whatnot. But then they talk about what they were excited to learn about, right? Um, and it came down to skills that they knew would help them get a job, which
Yes.
is very realistic. That's and these are teenagers, right? They're 15, 16-year olds telling me, I want to learn something that will translate into a job. And I thought that that was very powerful,
See that
to talk about that.
let me add to what you're saying. So the sustainability class, I had two students that were so gun-ho. They're so excited about sustainability. And then I was in a meeting for something else about sustainability in Waianae. And so there was it was a contact of mine, and she was like the CEO of this nonprofit organization. She had like 3 or 4 acres of land, of farmland to build in the community. Well,
Mhm.
these students were so interested in participating. I says, well, I can introduce you. So I sent an email. I called the parents just to make sure if this was okay, just all the background check. And the CEO was more than willing. So this is what the kids did. In a matter of 30 minutes, they made a PowerPoint, Google slide presentation of what their purpose was, um, how they wanted to accomplish it. I contacted the CEO. We had a meeting on Zoom, and she was floored. I mean, in a matter of 30 minutes, these two seventh graders presented their idea
Yeah,
to
that's
a CEO. And then the beautiful thing is they actually went to the place and worked together with their community. They built their community as seventh graders with the CEO. And I'm just thinking to myself, who are these people? Who are these kids, And all I was as a teacher, sometimes we're influencers and teachers, but I think we're also connectors.
yeah.
Like we can connect students to opportunities, to people that they would not normally have. And so uh, what we're talking about is so like 23rd century, you know what I'm saying? And we didn't even bring in AI. We didn't even bring in, like, gosh, why do we have to do that? Let's just get AI to do it. I agree to some extent.
Hmm.
But these kids, I mean, you can have deep conversations with them, reflection, maybe to new teachers. I would also encourage them to have good reflective questions with the students. So don't just do an activity and be like, "Yay, we did it. Good job, guys. High five. Yay. No, 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 no. Bring them back into the circle, bring them back into the circle and ask them, what was your takeaway?
Yeah.
What was your aha moment? What
Mhm.
did you notice about? Just simple, basic questions to get them to reflect. And as they articulate what they experienced, then that's a different level of learning, right?
Definitely.
And
When you
I think,
hear it, you reflect on things that you wouldn't normally reflect on.
yeah, but as new teachers, they might not get that. They're like, okay, check mark, I did that. Okay, next class, we're gonna be no, 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 no. Reflect, reflect, reflect.
I
Reflection is so
also
important.
feel like sometimes as teachers we can just be really brutal on ourselves in terms of um I could have done that better. Which is true. We can always improve, but to that point where you get so down on yourself, because I've seen a lot
I
of
was like that when I
teachers.
first started. I was all about deliverables. I was all about deliverables. We gotta accomplish this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna test high on our standardized test,
Mhm.
which is important. But the reflection, if I added the reflection aspect, it would have made them improve and it would have made me more appreciative and feelings of satisfaction as a teacher because you get worn out. You
Oh,
need to,
absolutely.
and taking a break, like you can even make it fun, like, okay, class, we're gonna have our tea time. We're gonna discuss what we learned today. So actually bring out, a cup for them to have hot chocolate or tea or something like that, and let's talk about what we learned and how can we improve,
Yeah.
and maybe put it in groups of fours or groups of fives, and you as a teacher walk around and you listen to their conversation, like I was saying. You take note for each student, how they're listening, how they're asking questions, what their responses are. You can become very, very creative, even in your grading system.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I'm just like remembering these things. I did a pilot program on teaching first year Hawaiian language from a communicative approach. So
Oh.
I looked at, we had the standards, yeah, of what sentence patterns they should, master, what they could present by first year level. But
Mhm.
what I did was I want to create an environment where we had what I called, um, it wasn't full immersion, it was guided immersion.
Okay.
So it's guided immersion. So I would guide them in speaking the language and communicating in the language through that targeted activity
Mhm.
or skill, right?
Yeah.
Well, what we did was it was summer school, so it was 4 or 5 hours a day. So you really had to craft your time well. So we started off in the morning with exercises. We were doing Tai Chi, hele makahema, huli kalima, hele makaakau, and then they would have to actually present doing Tai Chi. We played a lot. Um, Two things that the students said they enjoyed the most was one was meditation. We did guided
Oh, that's
meditations
nice.
at the end of the day, and I did it in Hawaiian.
Oh, okay.
The thing they appreciated about it was they didn't feel pressured. They could finally release and relax, like Hanui loko, ho'olohe mai kako i ka makani. Nani ka makani, and I would pluck my ukulele with them. That was one thing they loved. The second thing they loved was creating opportunities for them to use the language without feeling stupid. That's what they said in their previous classes in learning languages. They felt stupid, nervous,
Yeah.
anxiety, and fear.
Uh,
So we created that whether it was using PowerPoint presentations or whether we were using blocks
mhm.
to create sentences. And then at the end of the week, I would assess them. So in grading, 50% of their grade was class attendance. You can't learn a language
Yeah.
on your own. You can't learn a language.
Right.
You can't speak to yourself. And second was class participation.
Yeah,
And they graded themselves on that. So each week we would have like okay, so hi D, how did you do this past week? What would you rate yourself? How would you improve? What would you like to focus on? And then I asked, how can I help? What's your goal for next week? And each student, it only took about a minute or two.
yeah.
They were able to focus, reflect on their goal, see where they were at, give themselves a rating. Next week, boom, back at it again. It was so amazing to see how motivated these students were. And then the wonderful thing was they all performed at first year level. Some, I would say 50% of them, if I remember correctly, performed at second year level.
Oh, wow.
At second
Yeah,
year,
how did that go overall with the program?
yeah, that's what I'm
Said it
saying. It
was a
was a
pilot.
pilot program. Yeah. And so using these strategies really helped them to have a totally different, a positive experience in learning language. Learning another language is foreign. That's why they call it a foreign language.
It is, which is why
It's
when they say you need to immerse and just really experience.
Yeah, but you don't want them to drown. So that's why I'm saying guided immersion was very, very successful. I
Well, I
mean,
just think because you
by
remind me
the third week,
there's
by
a
the
thing of,
third week out of the 5 or 6 weeks, we're already done with the first year curriculum. I mean,
you
in a
know,
year's time, we finished that in
they have
3 weeks. So we continued on second year. We just continued with second year content, and these kids were performing like nobody's business. But what really got to me was when I brought in outside professionals to do because I didn't want me to be, I didn't want to bias the results. Like me asking the questions and like, oh, we just want to sound good for Kumu, for the teacher. No. So I
yeah.
brought an outside person and be like, you guys, I want you to be like brutally honest. And so it was so beautiful, the comments that they shared. It was just unbelievable. Basically, they were saying prior education in language, in learning another language, was brutal. They felt dumb. Some of them even connected it to their own self worth or identity as Native Hawaiians. Like, I hate this language, is
Mm.
like what some of them said, because it was so structured, right? It was the typical, okay, write down these words, memorize these words, here's a
Yeah.
sentence, translate. And then they said this was so freeing. I remember one comment was like, I didn't even realize I was talking in Hawaiian, and I felt so proud of myself and so good. That's huge. So one of the other assessments we had was they had to talk for 15 minutes in a natural conversation.
Mm.
So I had
That's a long
I
time.
had native like speak long time now for first year,
Yeah.
but they did it.
Because you're like
They did it.
thinking,
Well, they did it. Well,
yeah.
they don't even know how to ask questions, at first year, but uh it was a totally different way of looking at it. It was definitely outside of the box, but even when it comes to preparation and grading, like what is most important to you as a teacher, that's what you should be grading. So for me, participation was so important.
Oh,
50%.
yes.
Only
It's
10%,
all
only
part of the
10%, only 10% was the quizzes. I think 10%,
which is
15%,
different, yeah.
yeah, and 15% was the test. Um, I forget what the maybe participation was greater. I don't know, but I only had one out of the 20 some students that I had to contact the mom because he missed two classes, and if you miss three classes, that's a lot in summer school. So I spoke to the mom, and he never missed another class after that.
That's good.
The power of Hawaiian moms, I'll tell you that.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us today. Again, Lona, it's always wonderful to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll have another follow-up video and you can share more of what you've been doing and experiencing in your journey. Is there anything that you want to
I just want
share?
to thank you. Yeah, just mahalo yaoi, mahalo D. You are an inspiration to me and many others. You're a bright light in sometimes this dark world that we live in, this increasingly dark world that we live in, but there's still so much goodness in people. And I say teachers are that good people. They just need support and help, ideas sometimes,
Agree.
um, to get them outside of this traditional box that we've been in for the past, I don't know, 100 years.
I
So thank you for letting me be a blabbermouth. Hopefully next time I can be more focused in my responses.
Well, it's been
But
a
it's
while.
just fun, right?
Yeah, it's super fun. So, as always, thanking you, teachers. You can do great things in this world, and always remember you've got this.